The best way to think about neuroplasticity is to imagine if you, with your exact same genetic makeup, were born 30,000 years ago. Would you be the same person or someone completely different? We understand that as we grow older, we become a product of our environment. But it's more than that. Your brain absorbs everything around you for the first 10 to 20 years, and it then uses that information to come up with thoughts, feelings, and emotions. If a giraffe was with the exact same genetic makeup was born 30,000 years ago, it'd be the exact same giraffe. But you, on the other hand, would be someone completely different. Neuroplasticity is the one thing that separates us from every other animal. And if you want to be able to teach yourself anything, then you need to harness it. I'm going to be talking about what goes on inside your brain when you're learning, specifically the actions of Hebbian plasticity, what's the root cause of plasticity and how BDNF promotes it, and also how stress affects plasticity, especially chronic stress. Neuroplasticity is a gift that was given to us by Mother Nature, which allowed humans to conquer every corner of the planet because we were able to mold ourselves into whatever environment was thrown at us. Every opinion formed, every skill developed, and every relationship that shaped us physically changed the synapses in your brain to the point where the brain that you have right now is literally the residue of everything that you have done, repeatedly done, whether those things were good or bad. But before that, why is neuroplasticity even important? It's more than just trying to learn new things and developing habits that work in your favor. It's the reason why recovery from stroke is possible. There have been cases where chunks of the brain have been taken out of people's head, and you'd think that the task that part of the brain was responsible for would suffer in the absence. But over time, the neurons remap themselves, and it's almost as if that part of the brain was never taken out in the first place. Neuroplasticity is the reason why musicians have an enlarged motor cortex representation of their musician hand, and why London taxi drivers have a bigger hippocampus, bigger than the average person, because of years and years of mapping spatial navigations. Now, there are three main changes that happen in your synapse when your brain is learning new things. The first one is that there is an increase in the number of dendritic spines for those neurons. Dendritic spines are like the arms and legs of the neurons, and this is what the neurons use to communicate with one another. The more dendrites a neuron has, the more it's able to communicate and form better connections with the other neurons. The second is an increase in postsynaptic receptor density. Now, when these dendrites, they come through and try to communicate with the other neurons, they don't exactly touch. They communicate via these tiny messengers called neurotransmitters, and these neurotransmitters are received by the receptors that live on the outskirts of the dendrites. Not only is there an increased receptor density, but there is also an increased transmitter density. So there are more neurotransmitters flying across the synaptic cleft, and there are more receptors to receive those signals. All three of these changes work together to increase the effect of each signal. By increasing the number of dendrites, receptors, and transmitters at the postsynaptic cleft, the behavior that these neurons code for becomes so-called second nature. Just like when you were trying to walk when you were a toddler. The neurons that were responsible for walking went through these three changes through repeated effort, and over time, as you grew older, walking became second nature. So we talked about how it happens, but you didn't watch this far into the video just to learn the science for fun. An even bigger question is what causes neuroplasticity and promotes learning new and difficult things, like a handstand, for example. Again, the science is simple and it's one word: BDNF. BDNF is the molecular enabler for neuroplasticity. It's the one thing required to make those synaptic changes happen. It's essentially the key to neuroplasticity, and that is not exaggeration. You can use all the willpower in the world to try and write with your left hand, but if BDNF is not there, the synaptic changes required to strengthen that connection will not take place. It's required for long-term potentiation, which is just another way of saying strengthening the connections in your brain. And the things that increase BDNF are, first, physical movement, and an interesting second, Food scarcity. Essentially, your brain is at its most plastic state and has a bunch of BDNF floating around it, ready to make those synaptic connections strong right after you work out and also when you are fasting. Now, this combination is not random, however. The exact environment that promoted physical movement and food scarcity was the hunter-gatherer environment. Back in the primal ages, food scarcity was a huge thing, and so primates would be required to physically move their bodies to go out either hunt for food or looking for food. And in this high acute stress environment, the brain would be ticking at its maximum clock speed and basically remembering things to save your life. Important thing to mention is that this type of environment specifically activates acute stress and not chronic stress. Ideally, you would go hunting and would either get fed or die trying, literally. And the stress would quickly come to an end, either from you getting fed or dying. Nothing here suggests chronic stress. Turns out, chronic stress is exactly the type of environment that suppresses BDNF production and as a result, suppresses plasticity. You can see here that initially BDNF climbs with the stress, but as soon as the acute stress window finishes and it becomes chronic stress, BDNF plummets. This is because chronic stress itself is a type of circuitry that is susceptible to strengthening. Like I said in the beginning of this video, your brain right now is a residue of all the things that you have repeatedly done, whether those things were good or bad. And if chronically stressing is something that you do on a regular basis, then that becomes a significant part of yourself. Now that we've pinpointed what promotes and suppresses BDNF, how do we change our environment and behavior to maximize BDNF production? If you are stuck in this downhill spiral of chronic stress, the first thing to realize is that the stress itself has become a habit, thanks to your brain's plasticity. Second is to bring your brain back to that state of plasticity by doing things that increase BDNF production. Physical exercise, more specifically aerobic exercise that triggers the lactate BDNF pathway, is a good start. Caloric restriction and intermittent fasting also opens up the lock on the BDNF gene and makes it more accessible. Essentially, right after a heavy workout, while you're still fasted, with good sleep on top, gives you the maximum brain fertility. The next time you come back from the gym and before you've had your post-workout meal, spend 10 minutes working on whatever you're trying to get good at. Whether that's learning to play the guitar or increasing your typing speed, whatever it may be. Creating a cognitively challenging environment in that short window gives you the most fertile brain soil to grow and water whatever seed you're trying to plant. Even if you're just trying to memorize some quotes for your English essay, that short window with increased BDNF production gives you maximum retention. The brain does not lose plasticity as we age. The reason why we think that is because as we age, we develop the wrong kinds of habits. Habits like chronically stressing that suppresses BDNF production and hence suppresses neuroplasticity. But we are not stuck this way. With a little bit of a mindset shift and learning how plasticity is actually promoted, we can, no matter how old we are, can always develop and grow new pathways in our brain. Neuroplasticity is the one thing that separates us from every other animal. And if you want to be able to teach yourself anything, then you need to harness it.